tell me that's the Lord's Prayer.
And the glory.
What the hell's going on in here?
Excuse me?
In the Constitution, there is something called the First Amendment. The school board cannot force my son to pray, or anyone else.
So sue them.
Washington, D.C., the U.S. Supreme Court declared prayer in school unconstitutional.
This is about religious freedom. Here comes the hate mail.
Madalyn Murray opened the doors of her new American Atheist Center to much protest.
The most hated woman in America.
The nation's most famous atheist suddenly vanished.
Don't you know who I am?
Hello, Madalyn. What we want, $1 million.
I was vaguely familiar on the subject material on Madalyn herself, but I didn't realize just how much she has possibly shaped society today. So
Yeah.
Is that what drew you to her?
I mean, it's definitely a part of what drew me to the story. You know, I think that we've taken for granted our First Amendment rights, and she was definitely one of the biggest proponents of the separation of church and state in particular. So it's important to remember that you know, that as Americans, we have the constitutional freedom of religion.
Yeah.
And today, especially with some of what's going on in the world, we have to remember we're not strictly a Christian country, really.
You know, yeah, we were established kind of as a melting pot for all the
Yes.
different religions, and now it seems to become just one is the focus. There's only one right one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Madalyn, you know, she was a strong female lead, and you've done a lot of films with strong female leads.
Yeah.
So what draws you kind of to that perspective?
I guess my female side drives me to that. I don't know. I find characters. It's always just about finding characters that I like and am interested in exploring. And certainly Madalyn Murray O'Hair is a very complex and conflicted character that with so many layers that she was just hard to resist. And as you start writing something, you know, you get to know this person, the character, not the real person per se, although there was tons of research that went into it, but you really start to fall in love with the characters.
She's a great American character. I mean, she really is, embodies, I feel like, the revolutionary spirit.
Yes.
Something of what America was established on.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the 60s, 70s, she really came out of those years of rebellion. And really it's interesting because today they're saying, I saw in the news recently, they said there haven't been this many protests since the 60s or 70s. I don't know how they quantify that, but they're saying we're in a very similar time
We
now.
are, yeah. The Women's March, I think, was the largest protest in American history.
Yeah.
And it was national, and it happened everywhere.
Yeah.
So did your opinion of Madalyn change from when you started the research to the end?
Sure. I mean, as I got to know her, and as we started developing the story, my partner Irene Turner, writing partner, and I, you know, a sort of an arc sort of started to take place, and that was a tragedy, really, a tragedy, because she was a person who really believed and was passionate about her issues. But she ultimately got taken in by greed and you know, craving the limelight, which it's tale of hubris that ends pretty badly for her.
Yeah.
I feel like she was having a crisis. You know, that this is the fiction part, but that she was having a crisis of conscience there in that hotel room where she was being held for all those days.
So what about you? Were you familiar with Madalyn before the film?
Not at all. And it's sort of crazy that I feel like she's no longer in our collective consciousness. Because she was a huge figure in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and was on television all the time. But I had never heard of her until I met Tommy and read the script. And now I'm so fascinated with her. And I think what's one of the many things that's interesting about this film and about her story is you could do a whole traditional biopic on her and the atheist movement, but then the last weeks of her life are this whole other
just
crazy,
kind of
dark,
drama.
grisly true crime drama.
Yeah.
So you have these two elements that come together to make a really fascinating story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to have the biopic elements in order to put her life into context,
Right.
but it's really about so much more than that.
Yeah.
So the way our society is right now, do you think we need another Madalyn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're emerging. I mean, I don't, not necessarily specifically around the issue of religion, but I think, like you were saying, Tommy, about the 60s, I feel like there's a whole new generation of activists and revolutionaries who are coming really into the public consciousness. The founders of the Women's March, Linda Sarsour and Carmen Perez and all the other I don't remember all their names off the top of my head, but all the women who've started that event and that movement, really, I feel like are really at the forefront of vocalizing some of the opinions of the activist culture.
Yeah, and Madalyn was a provocateur as well, and unfortunately, some of those tactics have been co-opted by some crazy people on the right.
On the other side.
That's, I mean, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but like Milo Yiannopoulos is definitely, I think, sort of in the tradition of a Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Some of what he does. I mean, I think he's probably a little less serious than she is. But
yeah, more entertainment.
He's a little more, but he's got some interesting stuff to say. I find him fascinating, actually.
I find him fascinating too. You just don't have to take too much stock in what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
Which people are doing, and it's creating a whole separate kind of an extremist movement.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because as much as Madalyn was a provocateur, she was an intellectual as well.
She was a total intellectual. I mean, you see, if you can actually see it on YouTube, I think there's some, I think that Reverend that debate from the Donahue show where she debates this Reverend Harrington. I mean, she's saying some ridiculous stuff to wind up the audience, but I mean, the level of discourse is just so much more intellectual than anything you would ever see on television now. I mean, they're so much smarter. They were so much smarter back then, at least on television.
The lost art of debate. I mean,
So, was it just by chance that this is premiering at Austin, or was it planned? Since this is kind of where Madalyn spent, most of her.
Yeah.
We were always talking about Austin would be a great place to show this film because of the connection. Now we didn't shoot. We shot in LA. It was a low budget, and for whatever reason, we had to recreate our Austin hotel room on a stage in Los Angeles. But I'm really excited to see it with an Austin audience and see how they react.
Yeah.
How do you think they'll react? Or what are you hoping for, or hoping that they get out of it?
I'm hoping they like the movie.
Do you want it to be kind of a wake-up call? Just kind of.
I think that's part of it, but I think if there's anything I want people to take away from it, and it's like I don't go into a movie like saying, okay, this is going to be my message. Just kind of the movie has an evolution on its own, and you realize, oh, okay, this is maybe what I think it says. And I think it's that people are complicated. People are complicated. The world is complicated.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to not, see everything in such black and white terms. And that does apply to our sense of humanity, but also to the political situation now. I mean, I just think that people are people, and what makes them human is oftentimes bad and good and fascinating. So
great.
that's what I think it's about. Because she's fucking complicated.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
complicated. Yeah. And she was black and white. I mean, not to her, sort of to her detriment. You know, she was very stubborn and,
Yeah, but she's... You think she was very black and white?
Well,
she definitely used that to manipulated people.
Yeah, financially.
Well, yeah, but also just like manipulating it to her advantage. But she always said, "I am not telling you to follow my rules. I'm saying let me follow my rules and you follow your rules."
Yeah.
And that's to me that's not black and white.
I agree, but I think I was just sort of thinking about what you were saying, that people are complicated.
Right.
And, you know, I think her life was a lot more messy than the public image she sort of put out there. And I think she drove a lot of people away.
And there was that kind of the feud between her and Bill Jr. that ended up developing that many people could see as black and white, but I think it was far more complicated than that. There was a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But so did you learn anything from the film, like any, because she was full of lessons and ideas, which I loved, and it came across the screen very well.
Yeah.
So did you leave the shoot learning anything new?
I mean, absolutely. I love this film and I love this story, and you know, I think sort of what you were saying earlier, like I think Madalyn was very clear in that, like, practice what you want to practice, just do it in your own home and in your own church and keep it out of my yard. And the quote you've been saying all day is
keep the faith, people, just keep it to yourselves.
Yeah.
That was an exact quote.
Yeah. And that's perfect. That sums up exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, you know, like, one of the great things about living in America is the freedom of thought and the freedom of not only religion, but to sort of live in any way that you want to live, as long as it doesn't harm somebody else and doesn't infringe upon somebody else's rights. So that we need to be vigilant in maintaining that freedom, and that whatever I think or feel or practice in my own home doesn't affect you, you know, and I have the right to live the way I want to live, as long as it's not stopping you from living the way you want to live.
Yep, the American dream isn't just one person's dream.
Yeah.
A bunch of different dreams.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot.
My organization is a non-profit.
We both know that there are a few offshore accounts.
You don't think the police are going to be looking for me?
No, Madalyn, I don't think anyone's going to be looking for you.
Jack Ferguson.
You know Madalyn Murray O'Hair? She's disappeared.
No, you and I could make money doing this.
The cause that would make her rich.
My mother pissed off a lot of people.
Go ahead and shoot me.
Keep talking.